Hello and welcome to today's edition of Friday Fraud Review, proudly presented by AMSimpkins Associates as a free resource to stay up to date on the latest trends in higher education cyber fraud, as well as the technologies that are being developed to protect institutions and the students they serve all across the country. AMSA founder Maurice Simpkins will be your host, sharing real-life experience, insights from clients, partners, and thought leaders as we continue our mission to rescue higher education from the onslaught of cybercrime and identity theft.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Friday Fraud Review. I am your host, Maurice Simpkins, and as you know, we are here to talk all things fraud as it pertains to the world of higher education.
In reality, and we've done this now on tens of thousands of applications and students that have come through, we have yet to have a bad experience with a student, that with a real person who we have put through this process. In fact, students thank us. You know, Identity verification is part of our engagement strategy, and our students get it. They say, "Oh no, literally." You'll say, "Hey, we actually do need to have you show up. You provide an ID, do these other things." And they like, "I get it. Thanks. I wish everybody did this." But the only people that ever push back on us are the ones who are not legitimate. Like, we have positive experience from our real students. If someone pushes back and gives you an attitude, then you're like, yeah, I thought so. That's almost confirming in many ways, that you are a high risk applicant. In fact, let me give you an example of one that we had the other day. And by the way, this one probably takes the cake.
Today's episode is brought to you, of course, by the AMSA S.A.F.E product. Number one, in protecting and providing data and fraud prevention and protection in the world of higher education. Today's episode is going to be one for the ages, as we're going to have our first guest joining us here on the Friday Fraud Review. We're going to bring in a guest from a community college infrastructure, someone who has had the real world experience, should I say, on the grounds with these fraudsters. And as we get into today's episode, you're going to get to hear some of the insights, some of the stories, and really some of the struggles that your everyday institution, be it community college, be it four-year institution, are grappling with under the pressures of all of the fraudulent type of information and activity that is going on currently. So thank you for joining us. We'll be right back with the next part of our show.
As a community college admissions person, what I've seen over the holiday season is this is when we first detected and realized it was fraud. We were coming back from a holiday break where the college had been closed for 2 weeks, come back from the holidays, and we're getting ready to do our pre-spring semester meetings. We're doing analysis, and all of a sudden, at that point, I was director of admissions at the college and get queued up to give a big presentation because we were up 57% in our new student admissions and enrollment. We had done so much work to remove barriers for students, to make self-service more accessible and attainable. And so we see that 57%, we thought that was proof. And I decided, you know what, let me just update those numbers. When I tell this story, I have the real numbers. And so I reran the numbers, and all of a sudden, the 57% was like 127% in 3 days' time. A moment when you realize something is too good to be true. And at that time, but in that one moment, I knew absolutely they found my college. So first round, it was an admissions problem, right? And not say that we're supportive and given resources, but it was in this second place when it really became, had that broader impact, that it didn't take much convincing at that point. In fact, we immediately realized and had the full support of administration to go find a solution.
Well,
we searched for that solution. And at the time that it wasn't out there, right? Because S.A.F.E hadn't existed.
Too.
And there was no one. So we went excited and hopeful and with the financial and support of our administration to go get this solution. And they were trying to help us by lining up some potential vendors and things. But we had some specific criteria of what we were looking for, and it just didn't exist in the marketplace. And we had actually given up. We thought we were going to go into yet another cycle just doing it on our own. Then all of a sudden, we get word out that there's a company who is doing this. And obviously, you guys know this part of the story. I know listeners and viewers don't. But when we first met with you guys, and you guys did a demo for us, and were kind of showing us, what you guys had created, I was like, okay, this is the Holy Grail. What we're trying to do. You guys were doing, in many ways, some of the same things that we were trying to do on our side, but at scale. I was taking a single record and trying to look this person up in, let's do let's do a white pages lookup, reverse phone number lookup on them. Let's look up their address, see what we can figure out. And we didn't have the data sources that you guys. Yeah. We didn't have the ability to use machine learning, and we could not do it at scale in real time.
Did you find what would you say the difference is in? Because obviously, SAFE leaves several applications on any given day for review. Mm-hmm. There's still a lot of things that humans still need to put eyes on. From my experience, it cut my review time down. What used to be like between 5 and 10 minutes per applicant, I was able to cut that down to like 5 to 10 seconds. And it sounds like a ridiculously, unrealistic improvement, but that's really the scale of the change that it was for me. I don't know if would you characterize it about the same for what you guys are doing?
Yeah, similar. What we did on our side is, we went from having how we have ours set up. Every application that comes in. So we used to just auto admit, right? Every application that comes in, boom, automatically admitted. And then we on the back end we were doing the reviews on after the post admission. Again, because we didn't have the resources to put it up front. And I know some colleges just stopped auto admit altogether and just started reviewing everyone right up front. We couldn't do that just because of where we were in the process. So we would auto admit, and then we would do a review on the back end, and then try to pull out the students, which is in many ways more work, but this is what we did. But what SAFE allowed us to do is now, as soon as an application comes in, we inserted a condition into our auto admit rules. So SAFE takes the student data, runs it against your proprietary data sources, your algorithms, to spit back that probability. That probability score. And the way I like to look at it is SAFE compares that name on the applicant with what you know about the person whose name is on the application, and provide a probability, that is it that person. What we do on our end, then you queue us up, and we have our rule set that if it comes back with a high probability of legitimacy, we allow that process, the auto admit process picks up right where it left off. It's less than a 2-minute wait between the time the student hits submit on the application. It goes to SAFE. SAFE does a review, provides the score, and then the workflow picks up if it's low risk, high probability of success. And then what we do is we have our rule set to anything that is a higher risk applicant or lower probability, is they get queued up for us for a manual review. And that's where our operations folks and our administrators come in. So if you are low risk, you don't get eyes on at all. You sail right through, and we validate all this information, at the end to make sure to prove it out. So we don't even look at those, 60%, that SAFE tells us this is a low risk. But if it's 40%, we change our thresholds based on what we experience on the ground. So, but if it's a higher risk, that kind of the condition breaks the auto admit and queues it up to an administrator that essentially takes that application that compared Mike against Mike, Now we're going to compare against Mike against what we know about a student. Does this look like one of our students that we would expect to receive? And so we do kind of our internal version, and then we have the ability to either pass someone through and say, "Yep, this student is we believe this student's legitimate," or we queue them up for them to provide additional verification. So how long does it take per record? Well, for whatever percent, we spend 0 time on low risk applications. Our higher risk applications, probably maybe a minute per, anywhere between, some are easy to tell you're fraud within 5 seconds, or easier to tell you're fine within 5 seconds. It's those ones in the middle, that sometimes we'll spend a bit more time on. And that's probably more of a long-winded response than you were hoping for, but.
No, it's your experience, man, but it's remarkable. Just, coming from different parts of the country, completely different institutions, how similar the stories are. The idiosyncrasies are in what kinds of questions each school asks on the application, and what the different back end processes look like. But what's really consistent, from what I can tell, both working in the space and then in talking to other folks around the country about it, is everybody kind of comes to this recognition at or about the same way as we did, and you come to find out very quickly that schools with no barriers to entry don't really have any kind of experience in what to do in order to reject a student. Mm-hmm. Everything that all of our processes are built for is to try to find ways to catch them and force them back in, to try to find ways to work around cumbersome processes for folks that have a wide range of potential disadvantages, right? Everything that the institutions are set up to do is to try to find a way to railroad them in. And now all of a sudden, you have to come up with a way to 86, 5, 10, 15, 20% of your applicant pool. That's a big policy change for the institution itself, and it sounds like you guys did a really good job of hammering out not just what to do with the software, but what to do with the actual organization to take advantage of what the software is telling you,
Yeah, and honestly, that's some of the parts that I was excited about as any. But you hit on a couple of things. One is getting back to on the community college side, what our mission is, why we're here. Both as an institution, why the people who choose to work at a community college choose to work at a community college. It's really about that access, availability, and in many ways removing barriers to provide to help with the opportunity for advancement for students and individuals in our community and have that impact. What we've had to pivot on a little bit is to recognize that removing barriers doesn't mean removing guardrails. And so this is, we kind of look at this as we took down the barriers, but we still left guardrails up to try to guide things as appropriate. And if someone hits one of those guardrails, then we're protecting the student, we're protecting the college to try to course correct.
I'm with you, man. A speed bump is not a barrier.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And if you hit the speed bump too hard, you're going to break your suspension, which is kind of the point.
But at the same time, we're protecting the people, yes. The pedestrians and the people out there. But one of the things that we were able to do with this, though, using the safe data, is I said we removed we have automation in place for for the auto admits, our low risk. We actually built in automations and workflows to characterize, even with those that we queue up for manual review using SAFE. We have a red, yellow, green, process, and depending upon how you're characterized, your process is actually still automated at that point. Full communications, what the student has to do, and everything for that process is handed to both the student and whoever their advisor is to help them do that identity verification, based upon their red, yellow, green classification.
Are there any Are there any like particular examples that you have of, experiences with a specific malicious actor that's worth mentioning or noteworthy?
So the let me tell you one thing as we switch into that. One of the things we found in this is we were afraid as a college that if we put an identity check in front of students, that it would alienate and students. They wouldn't like it. They'd push back. They'd be resistant. In reality, and we've done this now on tens of thousands of applications and students that have come through, we have yet to have a bad experience with a student with a real person who we have put through this process. In fact, students thank us. Wow. Identity verification is part of our engagement strategy, and our students get it. They say, "Oh no, literally." You'll say, "Hey, we actually do need to have you show up. You provide an ID, do these other things." And they like, "I get it. Thanks. I wish everybody did this." But the only people that ever push back on us are the ones who are not legitimate. Like, we have positive experience from our real students. If someone pushes back and gives you an attitude, then you're like, yeah, I thought so. That's almost confirming in many ways, that you are a high risk applicant. In fact, let me give you an example of one that we had the other day. And by the way, this one probably takes the cake of any of these situations.
We've heard some crazy ones now, Ron.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm excited.
So we have allowed students who we identify as high risk to prove their identity. There will be a variety of ways. One of which is they can upload an ID and then come into one of our virtual spaces, to meet just face to face like we are virtually, and then show a copy of their ID with the person. Boom, we grab a screenshot. We call that good. Now, by the way, we knew that would work only until it didn't work anymore.
Yep.
And I just got proof that we've reached that point. So, situation. We get a student who shows up in our virtual space and is meeting with one of our virtual advisors. And before this person can be admitted, they must do the ID, do the person. And in talking with this person, our counselor says, All right, John. Now I just got to get a picture of you with your ID. If you don't mind turning on your camera, because camera's got to be on, IDs out, filters off.
Yeah.
John inadvertently, instead of hitting camera, he hit screen share. Okay. On his, so he meant to hit camera, turn camera on. He hit screen share. On his desktop was a spreadsheet. This spreadsheet, and it was a spreadsheet that had a whole bunch of names. In fact, what prompted it, as we were doing that, he said, "Oh, and will you confirm your date of birth for me?" Guy says, so he didn't realize, so he turned his screen on. He didn't realize his screen was on. And he has his ID out and says, and she says, "Hey, will you confirm your date of birth for me?" And he says, "Just a second." And all of a sudden he clicks his Excel tab to see what John had to look up what his date of birth was that he told us.
Sure.
And all of a sudden she sees this Excel tab pop up, and it's got John, Allison, Margaret, David, and a list of names, IDs, social security numbers, dates of birth, email addresses, and on, even a column called fake address.
Nice.
Fortunately, our recruiter was fast on her mouse and hit screen share. It's going to be screen capture, and got a picture of this guy's screen.
That is big.
And so she immediately said, "Hey, let me put you on hold for a moment, and let me see if I can get someone to help you." And so she's like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe what I just saw!" And had she not seen that screen, she would have just said, "Thank you, John. Appreciate that. You're admitted."
Whoa.
And she would. But
whoa.
Right.
So prior to him inadvertently sharing his screen, all of the
His front was
information that
good.
he'd given verbally sounded good enough that your rep, who is having this call ostensibly to prove or disprove this person's legitimacy, this guy was good enough that he actually had her sold until he accidentally shared his screen.
Yeah. So, but it gets into like our people aren't trained in investigators. Like,
No.
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
taking,
No one in higher ed.
I'm not taking a shot at her. I'm just saying, like, that's
Yeah.
how good the fraudster is.
Yeah. Like there were clues enough that we identified this student as having to go through this process. But we trusted the process to weed out the bad actors. And we'd had situations in which we're like, oh man, I just don't know. But this was the first time we said definitively. And again, we were going to admit the student, which is exactly what she's trained to do. Grab the screenshot, grab the screenshot, student picture of the camera of the ID, upload it to our system, mark them as admit, the student's on their way. And that was the eye-opening moment of we'd reached the point that we knew at some point we would.
I thank you for joining us today, Ron. This has been so insightful for us. And I'm pretty sure that there'll be some of our viewers and listeners that are just mind blown, like head rolling off their shoulders when they start to understand the concerted effort, the organized effort, just how comfortable. I mean, coming into a Zoom room, not as the person I'm saying I am, I got to have a level of comfort or, gall that just not everybody, has. But if I'm a person in higher education, I'm not thinking it takes all of that. I'm thinking this person in front of me is going to be legitimate, and I can move them forward, not thinking that, they're trying to implicate me and them getting across into some kind of fraudulent or malicious activity. Ron, this will be a episode that is talked about for a very, very long time. I am sitting here, my palms are sweating, and I'm just saying to myself, the audacity of these folks, the boldness of it, coming after our higher education institutional friends and colleagues, it really burns me up. But at the same time, I sit there and I say, we've got to do more. We've got to get in front of more institutions. We've got to get more institutions to understand that this is what they're dealing with. I spoke with an institution recently, and they said, they had some things where the SAFE platform had flagged different phone numbers and such. And we've seen instances where the fraudsters will take phone numbers that were, disconnected or recently put out of service and get those numbers reconnected. Why? So that they can use them for different fraud. It's almost like the scam we were seeing with the 10-minute email thing forever that was going on. And so they're going to forever be evolving in their ways. And we thank, you for your insight on what you're being able to see on that evolution. And so this has been just truly insightful and great for me. Eric, Ron, I don't know if you guys have anything else in there, but I'm sitting here now ready to be like, oh my goodness, how can we get ahead of this? How can we get ahead of this? Understanding everything we know now, how can we continue to move ahead? Because the SAFE platform can't sleep. We're going to have to sleep, but the SAFE platform can't sleep if it's going to be able to combat these levels of fraud and be efficient at it. I mean, this is sophisticated level operations here.
Yep.
So
thank you, guys. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to share. Hopefully, listeners will be inspired or find some insight from this. I'm telling you what, I never imagined I would ever see the back end of the organized crime piece of this of identity theft like I did the other day. And just thank goodness we had someone with the place of mind to be able to grab that screenshot when it was up for an instant and then call for backup.
For sure.
Yeah, that's something, Ron, that I think is going to be a pivoting moment in higher education. The fact that we can now say without a shadow of a doubt, we know this is organized, we know this is concerted, and we know that it's internationally connected. It rises the intent is a little higher, so that sooner or later we're going to get on the right person's radar, that they'll come in and really give some support, across the nation for the institutions that are grappling and fighting with the fraud today. So thank you so much for your insight, Ron. This has been an amazing day. Eric, thank you again. For those of you viewers who may not know, I can take this moment and truly, geek out, because Ron on one side was one of our first clients to come aboard the platform, and he immediately started giving us feedback and input on things that he would love to see in the platform. And Eric was already doing the same thing. Eric, we would push out new features. Eric would say, I like this, but for higher education to understand it, it needs a little of this, it needs a little of that. And then Ron would add the same thing in. And that's the true essence of what the SAFE platform is today and what we wanted it to be. We don't want to answer to the fraudsters. We answer to our higher education clients so that the fraudsters stay away. And that's what we're here and we're about here at the SAFE platform. And so we thank you all for joining us today. Friday Fraud Review. It has been a doozy hearing some of the craziness about what these fraudsters do. But thank you all for staying with us for the entire time. But it's been worth it. It has been worth it. Thank you all, and we'll see you next week on the Friday Fraud Review. I'm Maurice, my guests Eric and Ron. Tyler had to slide out a little earlier, and Bob did as well. So we thank you all, and we'll see you next time on the Friday Fraud Review.